Hello, everyone, and welcome to How to Maintain Happiness Throughout Your Life. I'm going to do an off-the-cuff talk today. And I'd like to focus on where do we find greatness in life. And I'm going to argue that we're best off if we find greatness in the ordinariness of life. And the first question that comes to my mind, at least, is why? Why is it that we have this need to be exceptional in our lives and need to stand out and have pictures taken of us and be on TV or be on a magazine or something like that? And one of the things that I would argue is that media, it presents to us the extremes of society. So I don't watch a lot of TV today, but years ago when I did, you had two contrasting shows. You had Oprah, and Oprah would have on celebrities and rich people and famous people and stuff like that. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you had Jerry Springer. And Jerry Springer, most people who, I really don't know the socioeconomic status of the people who are on the show, but they came across at least as, lower class people, rednecks maybe. And this is not to knock Jerry Springer, because if you stuck around through the circus of the show and listened to his final thought, it was actually very good information and very insightful. And and Jerry Springer himself used to get criticized, and that, he's an idiot host for running an idiot show, and I don't view it at all like that. And then even if we're looking at interviews, depending on where it is, we often see celebrity CEOs being interviewed. And basically this just makes for good TV. Unfortunately, nobody cares to watch about a tech help guy who helped somebody out with somebody had an urgent project due, and they saved their job and something like that. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. So, and then the other thing too, that we're bombarded with messages from advertising. And advertising plays on our insecurities. Basically, the message is, if you don't buy this product, you're lacking in something. So buy this product and you'll fulfill that missing need that you never even thought you had. So, and basically what that does, that turns us into voracious consumers. We have to have more and more and more and more. And then the other thing too is even our education system, right? I was, and many of us are taught, you need to get a good education, work hard, and you'll be successful in life, which, if you ask all the unemployed graduates how that dream is working out for them, they probably would not give a very positive statement on that. And here's the thing, is that education may not, like liberal arts, if you studied liberal arts, you're often going to be starting at the bottom rung of a ladder in a corporation, having to work years to work yourself up to a decent paying job. Not only to mention that, but you have all these student loans to pay. So it makes it very, very difficult to get ahead when you graduate with massive student loans and all you can find are entry-level jobs. So, and then the other thing too is that we reward and recognize the best singer, the best quarterback, the best marathon runner, the best whatever. And we don't seem to, it sort of gives out the message that, we have to excel at everything. We can't just be satisfied with an adequate performance. So the question starts to become, is it, first off, in order to become exceptional, you have to make sacrifices. So you have to give up time with your friends and family to work. If you're an athlete, you got to practice. If you want to be a virtuoso musician, you have to practice and practice and practice. You have the choice. You can either socialize or practice. And if you want to be a virtuoso, you got to give up your socializing to practice. And this sacrifice is often, many times, people run into the situation where they realize they find it wasn't worth it after all. They reach their desired level of success, and they realize, is this all there is? Is this all there is to it? Wow. I mean, I wasted all that time. And I don't hear, again, I'm not that plugged into media for many reasons, but I don't hear stories, but there were stories about CEOs. They rose to the level of, top levels of business, maybe even started a company, and then they become completely disillusioned with the business life, sell all their stocks and bonds, and go live in an off-grid cabin in the woods somewhere. And they end up being like 10 times happier doing that than working, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to run a multinational corporation. So this leads me to my next point, is that with all this drive to be exceptional and be special and to earn that recognition, fact of the matter is we can't all be special. Simply stated, if we were all special, then nobody's special, right? There's something to be said for that. So as an analogy, and not only that, but it's impossible for everyone to be special. That goes against the whole entire definition of being special. So if you were to ask many people, do you want to be wealthy? Then not everyone, I would argue, but a lot of people would say, yeah, of course I want to be wealthy. So let's just imagine for a moment if we could make everyone a billionaire, right? What exactly would happen in a situation like that? I'm not an economist, but my guess would be that would just cause everything all the prices of everything to skyrocket, because now people have money to spend on whatever. So you probably end up with a loaf of bread being $1,500. And if everyone were to be a billionaire, we actually would not be driving around in Bentleys, because the whole reason why a Bentley is because so few people can afford that kind of money to spend on that kind of car. And because of the hyperinflation, a Bentley would then become probably $10 billion. Who knows? As opposed to, I think, what's a Bentley now? Maybe 500 grand, maybe some are $1 million. Who knows? But probably something I'll never see in my life. But again, never say never. And then just to drive home that point, we saw that with the COVID relief funding, right? With the governments giving subsidies out to people, we found out that the prices are going up because people who didn't have money to spend before now had money to spend. So now all of us, I'm sure many of you listening to this can appreciate the fact you go to the grocery store, it's a lot more expensive now than it was 2-3 years ago. So, and then the thing that getting back to this exceptionalism is the fact that it's just a statistical fact. If you understand what the bell curve is, most people fall under that bell curve. They don't fall into the extremes. So it's just statistically a fact that for most of the people listening to this, they're going to have an ordinary average life. It's not going to be exceptional in any way, shape, or form. And then the other thing too, and given the situation, unfortunately, we're seeing the middle class getting gutted. So I don't know, because with a bell curve, one would assume that under the bell curve is basically the middle class, but we'll have to see what happens in the future, how that income distribution curve looks going forward. And then another thing too is that success is often the result of luck. Years ago, I saw Stuart Copeland at North by Northeast in Toronto. He came by. If you don't know who Stuart Copeland is, he is the drummer for The Police, a band, probably one of the biggest bands of the early 1980s. And he was asked, like, well, why do you think The Police were so good? And his answer was, I don't know. He said, we knew of bands that were just as talented and just as hardworking that never got off the ground. Why the police? Who knows? And I really do believe that success often comes from luck. And if we're fed messages that we have to be exceptional, but a large part of that success does come from luck, which we have no control over, then we're setting ourselves up for an impossible situation. So, um, and then lastly, the other thing too is that we're limited by our circumstances and our genetics. So as much as a short person wants to become a professional basketball player, they're just not genetically made up for it. Not to say they couldn't go to buy themselves one of those hoops you can put in your driveway, or go to the local baseball court and sink a few. I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that. And if that brings you joy, why not? But highly, highly unlikely that person will become a professional basketball player. And then again, circumstances. So if your dream, a lot of successful people come from Ivy League schools. Part of the reason is because they make connections with the highest levels of society. However, in order to get into an Ivy League school, for the most part, you have to come from money. Otherwise, you will not be able to afford it. Granted, there are scholarships for certain people, but for the most part, you have to come from very privileged means to go to an Ivy League school, for the most part, generally speaking. And then the other thing, too, is that how would society work anyhow if we all had top echelon jobs? Right? Who's going to work at the grocery store? Who's going to clean the streets? Who's going to work at Dunkin' Donuts or Tim Hortons in Canada? We need people like that for society to function. And clearly, and again, I don't want to get into the debate of the, quite honestly, overpaid CEOs, but to a certain extent, I don't have an issue, and I don't think most people do, with the fact that the CEO does make more money than the person serving coffee. So, we're all going to be ordinary or average in our lives. So because of that, we need to accept that. We need to just accept the cards we've been dealt with, accept life as it is. Because when we don't accept that, we just cause ourselves suffering. We're going after things that might not be unattainable, or really things that we were misled into believing that will bring us happiness, when in fact they don't. So we need to be able to discern what are the things we need to focus on that make us happy, versus what are the things that we don't need to focus on that make us happy. And the reality is that most of the important things in life won't lead to you being perceived as being exceptional. So if you're a great spouse, your other spouse, your significant other, may want to give you an award for, best spouse, but really at the end of the day, the mayor of the city is not going to come out to your house and give you a key to the city or whatever. However, your ability to be a good spouse probably has the most significant impact on your happiness in life. So you really have to discern what you want to focus on in life, rather than try to be exceptional in areas of your life that you're led to believe you're supposed to be exceptional. And then the other thing too is we have to stop feeling that envy for those people who have reached a certain level of success, where we're being fed messages about their life. Because the reality is that there's nothing to be envious about those people. I will reiterate this once again, and I will keep reiterating it. Studies show that more money does not equal more happiness. So you're just chasing your own tail if you're going after material wealth. It's not going to lead to more happiness. And then again, fame and fortune. Uh, Sadly enough, many of those people ended up becoming drug addicts. So some of them killed themselves. It's clear to see that if we look at celebrity as a whole, it's not. It didn't turn out to be such a great thing for some people. It did for sure, but some people it wasn't a great thing. And we have to stop listening to those messages that and understand that those messages that we receive in the media, those are the extremes of society. And I'm thinking now, just even in terms of looks, most people are average looking. But do you think any advertiser is going to put an average looking person in their advertising? No, they're going to find the best, if it's for athletic wear, they look for the most ripped, athletic, healthy looking person possible. Or if it's a fashion model, they look for the best looking person possible. We need to become aware of that is an extreme circumstance rather than it is what we would expect in our own lives. And modeling is certainly a good example of that because the ideal in a model, I'm talking female model specifically, is tall and thin. Only a very small percentage of women actually are like that. Most women women come in all different shapes and sizes. So we end up getting this expectation set as to what female beauty is, when really it's very variable. And so the other thing too is that we have to because we're fed these messages of being exceptional, and then when we become a failure, we think, okay, well, I'll never measure up. I'm a failure. And in both those circumstances, we end up developing a sense of entitlement. So that's why we need to embrace our ordinariness. We need to accept that for the vast majority of people in life, we're just going to be average, ordinary citizens. And if we don't achieve those levels of greatness that we're told we should achieve, if we can accept our own ordinariness, then we won't go the other direction and think, oh, well, I'm a complete failure. And because in that sense, we also develop a sense of entitlement, right? That, well, I can't do anything and I'm not going to take any responsibility, so why try? So, all that being said, the fact that most of us are going to be ordinary and average, we need to embrace that, and also embrace the fact that you're a good person and you have greatness just simply in being who you are. You don't need to be great, exceptional. Let me phrase it this way. You don't need to be exceptional from a societal standpoint to be a great person. You can be a great person anyhow. And I've heard this said before, is that for every one of us on the planet today, we are a unique mixture of genetics and life experience that no one will ever have. So we're very special in that sense. And this leads me to my last thing, is that, well, how do we find that greatness? So, and I'm going to take a bit of a dark turn here and talk about people who commit suicide. Thankfully, I've never had someone close to me commit suicide, but I have friends of friends that have committed suicide. So being on the fringes allowed me to get somewhat of a wider perspective on what happened. And I thought about it, and I thought, when I looked at the other people, because I wasn't so emotionally involved in it, and I saw how that's the person who killed themselves, how much it hurt their friends and family. They were devastated. It was horrible for those people. And the thought came to me, is like, if that person knew what impact that their death would have on their friends and family, would they have gone through with it? If there's some way, sort of like the Charles Dickens Christmas of I call it Christmas of the suicide future. If you could bring those messages back to that person before they commit the act, would they go through with it? And my answer is no, I don't think they would, which leads me to believe that that person overestimated their value to the world at large and underestimated their value to their close friends and family and their community. So, driving home this point, we don't have to be exceptional to be great or to be have value in our lives. We don't have to be a CEO of a multinational corporation or be executive director of some corporate or nonprofit that's saving thousands and thousands of lives. Or and not only that, but this also, while I was making notes to this, it reminded me even celebrities who've gone back into their old communities or a community, and they've started some little nonprofit thing that may, help feed hungry kids. And the example that I actually came to mind was will.i.am from Black Eyed Peas. And if memory serves me correctly, he started a after-school program back in his home community because he came from very modest circumstances. And that was his greatest accomplishment. He's very proud of what he did. The Grammys, the playing to crowds and all that stuff didn't matter to him. Well, I think it mattered somewhat, but helping out his community mattered more than that stuff, right? So, and there are other examples of celebrities who've done that, and they will say that these little pet projects that they did that helped out their a small community brought them a lot more satisfaction and joy than their big, famous, glamorous life. So, so this is what I'm saying here is don't underestimate the value that you can bring to someone's life by just helping a single person, helping a friend or a family member who needs your help, or even helping a stranger, a complete stranger. Obviously, the amount of help you give to someone is dependent on the amount of rapport you have with someone. But certainly, and we've all seen that. Somebody has a bicycle accident, and complete strangers will come up and say, "How can I help?" Right? That there's a major value in that we underestimate. That we think, oh well, we got to do great things. And then the other thing too is that because we're fed these messages of trying to be exceptional, trying to be great, we become so concerned with doing great things and helping in a great way that we actually forget to help a single individual, right? And so basically what I'm arguing for is just because you're going to have an ordinary, average life, and for most of us, our lives are going to be small. We're just operating with our own community, both our family community, friend community. We all have a work community. Sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't. But I guess really what we operate in different communities, plural form, and this is where we should be placing our focus. And the reason being too is that this goes back to The Good Life. The key point of that book was it's our relationships that determine our happiness in life. So nurturing, working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for years on end, it takes away from your relationships. You might build a great business or something great, but at the same time, you're making the sacrifices of your relationships to do that. Now, I'm not saying that if you have a project that you want to do, go through it, but just make just think more deeply about that, and that question why you're doing this, right? Because if you're doing it just in response to meet some external validation, then that would be the wrong reason for it. But you could have some strong internal motivations for doing it, and that would be a good reason to do it. So, and then I just want to end it off here that if we all sort of shrunk down our lives and just focused on our own communities and worked on building up and making life just better in our own little communities, and if every community started doing that, then really how much help would be needed in the world going forward? If we could all just help those people closest to us, and I would argue that we wouldn't have needs for and again, I'm not knocking United Way. That's who I was going to go after. Not knocking them; they're doing good work. But at the same time, if we all just focused on our own community and helping our own community, would we have a need for a big organization like United Way? I would say maybe not. Maybe that wouldn't be needed so much. So thank you for listening. I hope you got some value out of this. And take care, everyone.